Oil-soaked, very small bobcat cub crawled to highway. What happens next will leave you speechless. It was late August, the sun a relentless blaze when that distance closed. Ethan was on Highway 87, a stretch flanked by scrub and oil rigs, his rig loaded with pipe for a site near Odessa. The asphalt shimmered with heat, the cab's AC rattling when he saw it. A small shape crawling onto the shoulder, barely bigger than a kitten, its spotted fur slick with black oil, its movements slow and desperate. Ethan slammed on the brakes, the rig shuddering to a stop, his heart pounding as he leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. "What the hell?" he said, his voice low, as he realized what it was. A bobcat cub, tiny and oil-soaked, its golden eyes wide with fear, trembling on the highway's edge. He killed the engine, hazard lights flashing, and stepped out, his boots crunching on gravel. The cub yowled, a weak, high sound, its small body shaking, oil dripping onto the asphalt. Ethan knelt a safe distance away, his chest tightening. It was alone, likely from the nearby oil fields, its mother either dead or lost to a spill. "You're in a bad spot, little guy," he said, his voice steady despite the ache in his gut. He knew the risks, traffic, predators, the oil's toxicity, but the cub's cries, raw and pleading, held him there. He grabbed a towel from his cab, wrapped the cub gently, its tiny claws swiping at him, and lifted it from the shoulder. "Let's get you cleaned up," he said, the cub's oil-slicked warmth against his chest as he climbed back into the rig, the highway stretching empty around him. This wasn't just a detour, it was a life in his hands, one he couldn't ignore. Ethan Morrow sat in the cab of his rig on Highway 87, the West Texas sun beating down, the oil-soaked bobcat cub wrapped in a towel on the passenger seat. The cub's spotted fur was matted with black crude, its golden eyes half closed, its small body trembling with each shallow breath. Ethan's gray eyes narrowed, his hands gripping the wheel, the weight of the moment sinking in. "You're a mess," he said, his voice gruff but soft, the kind he used to calm himself on long hauls. The cub yowled weakly, its tiny paws twitching, oil smearing the towel, and Ethan knew he had to act fast, or the cub wouldn't make it. He'd seen oil spills before, the rigs near Pineview often leaking, but never a creature this small caught in the mess. The oil was toxic, coating the cub's fur, likely ingested as it tried to clean itself. Ethan grabbed his phone, searching for the nearest vet, his fingers steady despite the urgency. The closest was in Pineview, 20 miles back, a small clinic run by a woman named Dr. Vera Holt. He called, the line crackling. "Found a bobcat cub covered in oil," he said, his tone direct. "It's bad." Vera's voice was calm but firm. "Get here quick. Keep it warm. Don't let it groom itself." Ethan hung up, wrapping the cub tighter, its shivering easing slightly in the cab's heat. He turned the rig around, tires grinding on gravel, and floored it back toward Pineview, the highway a blur of heat and dust. "Hang on, little guy," he said, glancing at the cub, its yowls fading to whimpers. He kept one hand on the towel, stopping the cub from licking its fur, the oil's sharp smell filling the cab. The drive felt endless, every mile a gamble, but Ethan's focus was iron. He'd hauled through storms, dodged wrecks, and he wasn't losing this cub. He reached the clinic in 15 minutes, pulling into the lot, dust billowing as he grabbed the cub and ran inside, his boots heavy on the concrete. Vera met him at the door, her gray hair tied back, her hands already gloved. "Let's see it," she said, taking the cub, her movements swift as she set it on a table. The oil had matted its fur, its breathing labored, but its eyes still held a spark. Vera worked fast, washing the cub with Dawn soap, the black crude rinsing away in streaks, revealing spotted fur beneath. "It's young, maybe 3 weeks," she said, her voice steady. "Oil's in its system, but we'll flush it. You got here just in time." Ethan stood back, his chest tight, watching as Vera fed the cub a rehydration solution, its small body slowly responding. "Will it make it?" he asked, his voice low. Vera nodded. "It's a fighter. Leave it with me tonight." Ethan left, the clinic's hum fading behind him. The cub's golden eyes burned into his memory. The next morning, the West Texas sun rose over Pineview, the air already warm as Ethan Morrow drove back to Vera Holt's clinic. He'd barely slept, his mind on the oil-soaked bobcat cub, its weak yowls echoing in his head. He'd named it Slick. for the crude that nearly killed it, a name that stuck despite the uncertainty. Ethan parked his rig outside the clinic, his boots kicking up dust, and stepped inside, his gray eyes searching. Vera was at the counter, her face tired but calm. "It made it through the night," she said, leading him to a small crate where Slick lay, its spotted fur clean, its golden eyes brighter, though still weak. "It's a miracle it survived," she added, her voice matter-of-fact. "But it needs care, weeks, maybe months." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight, the weight of responsibility settling in. "I'll take it," he said, his voice firm. Vera raised an eyebrow. "You're a trucker, Ethan." "It's a bobcat, not a pet." He shrugged, his gaze on Slick. "I found it. I'm seeing it through." Vera sighed, handing him a list of care instructions. Milk formula, a warm crate, no handling. To keep it wild. "Call a rehab center when it's stronger," she said. Ethan took the crate, Slick's small body curled inside, and headed back to his rig, the highway waiting. He stopped at a roadside diner on the edge of Pineview, a place called Rosie's, its neon sign flickering in the morning light. The diner was busy, truckers and locals filling the booths, the air thick with the smell of bacon and coffee. Ethan set Slick's crate beside him, ordering a plate of eggs, his mind on the cub. A waitress, a woman named June with a bright smile, noticed the crate. "What's that?" she asked, peering in. "Bobcat Cub," Ethan said, his tone gruff. "Found it on the highway, oil-soaked." June's eyes widened, but she nodded. "You're a good man, Ethan Morrow. Rosie's got some milk in the back, on the house." Ethan thanked her, the small kindness steadying him, and fed Slick a bottle, the cub's hungry sucks a quiet victory. Back on the road, Ethan set up a space in his rig, a crate with blankets, a small heater to keep Slick warm. He drove shorter routes, checking on the cub at every stop, his hands steady as he fed and cleaned it. "You're tougher than you look," he'd say, watching Slick grow, its yowls stronger each day. He called a rehab center in Abilene, speaking to a man named Dale. "Got a bobcat cub here," he said, the line crackling. "Raised it from near death." Dale's voice was brisk. "Bring it in November. Keep it wild till then." Ethan hung up, his gaze on Slick, knowing the road ahead would test them both. Fall settled over West Texas, the highways around Pineview, cooling as Ethan Morrow adjusted to life with Slick. The bobcat cub had grown, its spotted coat sleek, its golden eyes sharp, its small body filling out with each passing week. Ethan had turned his rig into a makeshift nursery, Slick's crate secured in the sleeper cab, a small heater keeping it warm, bottles of formula stashed in a cooler. "You're a road warrior now," he'd say, his voice gruff but warm, watching. Slick batted a rag, its playful swipes a sign of recovery. The cub's presence changed the rhythm of his hauls. Shorter routes, more stops. But Ethan didn't mind. The yowls a comfort against the highway's hum. He kept Slick wild, feeding it raw meat from butcher shops at truck stops, using a stick to deliver meals, avoiding too much contact. "Can't let you think I'm your mama," he'd mutter, though his heart tugged when Slick's eyes met his, curious and trusting. Ethan's life on the road had always been solitary, but Slick filled the cab with a new kind of purpose, a reminder of why he'd stopped that day on Highway 87. He'd check on the cub at every rest stop, his hands steady as he cleaned the crate, fed it, and watched it grow, its instincts sharpening with each day. November came, the air crisp, and Ethan knew it was time. He drove to the rehab center in Abilene, a 4-hour haul, Slick's yowls filling the cab as he sensed the change. "You're ready," Ethan said, his throat tight, as he handed the crate to Dale, a wiry man with a no-nonsense air. "He's strong," Dale said, peering at Slick. "We'll release him in the Davis Mountains. Good territory." Ethan nodded, his chest heavy, and drove back to Pineview, the cab silent, the empty crate a weight beside him. That night, he sat in his small trailer, the stars bright above, and let the tears come. "Be safe, Slick," he said, the highway stretching dark outside. A year passed, the seasons turning, and Ethan returned to his routine. Long hauls, late nights, the road his constant. He thought of Slick often, wondering if he'd survived, the memory of those golden eyes a quiet ache. It was late fall, the air cool when he saw him. Ethan was on Highway 87 again, near the spot where he'd found Slick, when a bobcat appeared on the shoulder. Slick, grown, his coat sleek, his eyes unmistakable. "Slick," Ethan said, his voice breaking, tears welling as he pulled over, the bobcat watching him, a chuff rumbling in its chest. Winter returned to West Texas, the highways around Pineview dusted with frost as Ethan Morrow's life took on new meaning. At 39, he still drove his rig, his dark hair grayer under his cap, his gray eyes softer, carrying a quiet wonder. Slick's return on Highway 87 had shifted something in him. The Bobcat's survival, a year after release, had left him speechless, a testament to the wild's resilience. He'd see Slick sometimes, a flash of spotted fur on the shoulder, a yowl at dusk, always at a distance, a reminder of the life he'd saved. One chilly evening, Ethan was hauling a load to Odessa, the highway dark under a starlit sky, when he heard a familiar yowl. He slowed, pulling onto the shoulder, and there was Slick, his golden eyes glowing in the headlights. But he wasn't alone. 3 smaller bobcats trailed him, their coats spotted, eyes mirroring his, their movements cautious, but curious. "Your family," Ethan said, his voice breaking, tears streaming down his face as he stepped out, the cold biting his hands. Slick had not only survived, he'd thrived, building a life in the wild, a legacy Ethan had helped create. Slick stepped closer, dropping a small object at Ethan's feet, a piece of bone, a token of the hunt. Ethan laughed through his tears, picking it up. "You're showing off," he said, his heart full. The cubs stayed back, watching, as Slick chuffed again, then turned, leading them into the scrub, their forms fading into the dark. Ethan stood, on the highway, hazard lights flashing, clutching the bone, his sobs quiet in the night air, a mix of joy and awe. He'd saved Slick, given him a chance, and now Slick had returned, not just to survive, but to show Ethan the life he'd built. Ethan kept driving for years, always watching for Slick, catching glimpses of him and his cubs, their yowls a comfort, on the road. "You gave me something too," he'd say, his voice carrying over the highway, where Slick roamed, free but never far, a bond forged in oil and asphalt that proved the wild could endure, could connect, could leave you speechless, with its grace.